Well, speaking of communism, it turns out that Van Jones and Bill Maher are not exactly siding with Trump, but I mean, they might as well be, because they have both come out saying that, yeah, they don't want to live under communism. I don't blame them. I don't want to live under communism either. But this dovetails nicely with the speech, rally, whatever you wish to call it, that Trump held just the other night on communism. And yes, everybody knew it was going to be talking about communism. Relax. Anyway, so Trump gave a masterful speech on communism. It was excellent. Like I said, when Trump makes a mistake, I'll tell you. But when he does good, I'll tell you that too. And he come out with a masterful speech last night on communism and how communism is not conducive to the Constitution of the United States, which it is not. Communism is diametrically opposed to the Constitution of the United States. I've stated this numerous times, and it's finally sinking in. We say, well, Vaughn, what in the world started all this? The colleges and universities actually started all this. See, what you got to do, you got to know your history, okay? It's important to know your history. In 1933, communists came over here posing as professors and got tenure in our colleges and universities. And ever since 1933, what have they been teaching? They've been teaching communism. Subtly, roundabout ways, but they've been teaching communism. And so you have generation after generation after generation who's been taught communism without even realizing they've been taught communism. This is why you have the media calling for democracy. This is why you have some pundits calling for democracy, because they don't realize that they've actually been taught communism. Democracy is soft communism. Hans Hermann Hoppe. Great man. Hans Hermann Hoppe is a great man, and he's a smart man. He's a very learned man. And he'd tell you it's soft communism, okay? In fact, I dare say that all this talk about democracy is how they got communism through the door in the first place. But I digress. The point is that you got all these kids from 1933 up until now being taught soft communism without even realizing. And as a result, now you've got people wanting the socialists of America. You got people wanting, communist ideology in the marketplace and whatnot. You got people now calling for the Supreme Court to be abolished, for the president and vice president to be abolished and replaced with, I don't know what, talking heads? I never fully grasped what they wanted to replace them with, but whatever. But the point is that, this is how it starts, folks. This is how it starts. Go look at your history. Folks, I'm a historian. Go look at your history. They ease their way in there, right? And then if you don't accept what they're selling, then they get open rebellion like they did in 1917 in Russia. Okay? But anyway, the point is that, who would have thought that Van Jones and Bill Maher, my doppelganger, would be agreeing with me and them hardcore leftists? Surprise! Van Jones has finally woken up and smelled the coffee and said, oh, yeah, I don't want to live in communism. And Bill Maher did the same thing. In fact, Bill Maher said those exact words, I don't want to live in a communist country. And he's absolutely right. Communism, as Donald Trump correctly pointed out in his speech last night, always ends up in either a brutal dictatorship or a brutal oligarchy. Every single time. Google it, for fuck's sake. Because it does. All right, so we don't want that. That's a bad thing. All right? We don't want thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent Americans killed. That's a bad thing. Because that's part of communism. Communism tends to slaughter everybody. Anybody they don't like, they want to kill them. So, no, I don't want that in my country, I don't know why communists were allowed in here in the first damn place. They should have been barred at the door. In fact, any ideology, according to the McCarran-Walters Act of 1954, any ideology that is contrary to the Constitution of the United States should be automatically barred entry to the United States. Period. If you have an ideology that says it's okay to kill people, that it's okay to take over the country, that it's okay to, dismantle institutions that have been here for 250 plus years now that we're over our 250 mark, no, you shouldn't be here. You go somewhere else. You don't like America, don't come to America. Duh. How hard is this to understand, right? If you don't like America, don't come to America. Simple, right? Right? Yeah. But they come here because they're not coming here because they like America. They're coming here because they want to destroy America and replace it with their ideology, their belief structure, their institutions. And that's why they're coming. They're not coming here because they love America. And that's the whole damn point. And that's why they need to fucking go. They need to get the fuck out. And if they won't go voluntarily, well, then we need to get ICE to remove them. I talked about this just the other day. I said, would you allow a rattlesnake to stay in your house? Obviously, I hope your answer is no. I hope your answer is no, because eventually you're going to get bit and die, right? Yeah. And by in your house, I mean free roaming in your house. I don't mean in a cage. I mean free roaming in your house. Obviously you would never allow that, right? Hopefully common sense would kick in and you'd be like, no, I can't do that. Okay. So we have the rattlesnake in our house running loose right now. So what we need to do now is we need to catch the rattlesnake and we need to kick it the fuck out of the house, right? Or destroy it. Obviously, I would prefer it be destroyed, but yeah, I got a lot of bleeding hearts out there. But anyway, so here we are. We literally have communism, and now you've got people like Van Jones and Bill Maher, hardcore leftists, saying, "Yeah, I didn't sign up to live under communism." See that? You have this phrase, "Capitalism rises all boats." Well, you have the exact opposite phrase for communism. Communism sinks all boats. So you don't want your boat sunk, right? That would be a bad thing. He sunk my battleship. Yeah, we don't want communism coming in and sinking everybody's boat, right? And now it's got up here to Van Jones. It's got up here to Bill Maher. It's finally, my what is it, at least a few years now, screaming communism, communism, communism. Finally people are paying attention, because I've been screaming about this for years, people. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been talking about this for years. And now finally it's registering up here. Now finally people are getting it. Now finally we need to understand of what's been taught in our colleges and universities has been communism. That's what it's been. And so now you got all these young folk out there say, "Oh, well, communism's great." I asked this one kid, now this was years ago, but I asked this one kid, I said, "Do you know who that guy is on your shirt?" He said, "No, I have no idea." I said, "What? You don't know who's on your shirt?" He said, "No." And I said, "That's Che Guevara, a mass murderer. A mass murderer so dangerous that even the communists killed his ass." And they're like, "What?" I said, "Yeah. Fidel Castro was terrified of Che Guevara because Che Guevara was the real deal. He'd kill you as soon as to look at you. Okay? And even Fidel Castro had Che Guevara executed because he was so far gone. He was too dangerous even for the Communist Party of Cuba, who themselves killed thousands and thousands of people. And he was too dangerous even for them. And these guys are running around with Che Guevara shirts on? Learn what you're wearing. Make sure that what I've asked people, show me what that tat means. What does that tattoo mean to you? I don't know. Well, you better know. Symbols mean shit, folks. You know, symbols mean things, okay? You need to know what those symbols mean. If you got a tattoo on your arm, you better know what it is, or on your leg, or wherever. You better know what it is. You better know what it means, okay? You wear a t-shirt, know what that t-shirt means or represents. I mean, but yeah, I was gobsmacked that Van Jones and Bill Maher just put out statements. Yeah, we don't want to live in a communist country. Well, good. That shows me that you're actually on your way to wisdom, okay? Because that's showing wisdom when you realize, hey, I don't want to live in a communist nation. That's showing wisdom, and that's a good thing. That's the start of a good thing. Now keep going by understanding that capitalism is really the only real answer, because communism is dangerous. You know, and Bill Maher even went further. He said, I read their statements. I read where they said, oh, it's socialism, and he said, I've read their statements though. I've seen what they say. I've seen what it represents. And Bill Maher basically said, you know, socialism is indeed a stepping stone to communism, at least here in the West. Now, I can't speak for Europe, I can't speak for anywhere else, but here in America, it is indeed a stepping stone to communism. And all we got to do is look south at all these countries in South America and Central America. We take one look at them and we can easily see, yeah, socialism, at least in this case, here in the West, is indeed a stepping stone to communism, because country after country after country in Central America, South America has proven this over and over and over again, right? You know, look at Maduro. Look at what was the name of that one guy, Viliche or some shit like that? I can't remember the name. Anyway, but you know what I'm talking about, right? And it started out as communism, and it eventually morphed into a brutal dictatorship, didn't it? Yeah, and it happens every time. It's either a brutal dictatorship or a brutal oligarchy every single time. History has shown this. Okay, common sense says, hey, pay attention to history, because history has always been right. And now it's time to pay attention. Now it's time to wake up and smell the coffee. The morning coffee. But it's time to wake up and smell the coffee and say, okay, we need to go in, we need to clean up our colleges and universities. We need to put people in our colleges and universities that love America. I just talked about this in my previous. Why can't we get people that love America? Why? Why can't we get people in our colleges and universities, in our movies, in our TV shows, in our books that love America? Seems like it's very difficult to do that these days, doesn't it? And who's been fomenting all this hate about the Founding Fathers and the Constitution and whatnot? The hard left, communists, socialists, maybe a few fascists in there. I don't know. But I mean, you know, common sense, folks. Common sense. A little common sense. Communism doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. Okay? Now it's time to wake up, smell the coffee, and say, okay, let's get people that love this country. Let's get back to the Founding Fathers and their ideals. Start reading the Federalist Papers and Anti-Federalist Papers. Let's see if, and for God's sakes, let's see if we can get rid of this bastardized version of the Constitution that was written in 1817, I think it was. Written in 1817, and let's go back to the original Constitution in 1776. Well, 1779 technically, but let's go back to the original Constitution, the original Bill of Rights. Let's get back to what the ideals of the Founding Fathers were, instead of embracing an ideology that has historically failed and failed and failed and failed and failed over and over again, at the tune of thousands and thousands of innocent lives, of course. But let's get back to real reality here, and get back to being patriotic Americans. Because remember, folks, it wasn't that long ago that the Democrats were patriotic Americans too. They just had a different idea on how to get things done. So we need to get back to being Americans again and putting away all this insanity, because that's what it is, really. I mean, let's be honest, it's insanity. And get back to being real, man. Just being real, you know? Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Y'all have a pleasant day and a better tomorrow. But yeah, Van Jones and Bill Maher basically siding with Donald Trump. Who would have thunk it, right? Bye.